I really still believe that journalism is that noble profession, that we can expose injustices where they take place. We can bring light to the darkness, and it's an important job, and we need journalism now, I think, more than ever.
Jerry Mitchell is an accomplished investigative journalist who researches cold, unsolved murder cases from the Civil Rights era in order to reopen the case and bring the murderers to justice. Through his research, Mitchell's investigations eventually led to the arrest of several Klansmen and white supremacists who had gotten away with murdering key civil rights figures. After graduating from Harding University in 1982 with a degree in journalism, and later a master's degree from Ohio State University in 1997, Mitchell went on to become a reporter for the Arkansas Hot Springs Sentinel-Record. He would then become a court reporter for the Mississippi paper Clarion Ledger in 1986. After viewing the 1988 film Mississippi Burning, a crime thriller about detectives investigating the murders of 3 civil rights leaders, Mitchell was inspired to become an investigative journalist and follow the route of investigating unsolved crimes and murders during the civil rights era. Mitchell's first case involved the assassination of NAACP leader Medgar Evers. Evers was a notable civil rights activist that fought for African American voting rights and desegregation. In 1963, Evers was shot and killed outside the front of his house. A few weeks later, KKK member Brian Della Beckwith was arrested for Evers' murder. The all-white juries that decided Beckwith's case became deadlocked, and the case ended with a hung jury. 26 years later, in 1989, Jerry Mitchell became interested in this unsolved case and decided to investigate into it further. Mitchell eventually discovered an organization called the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission, which was a state-funded spy arm that infiltrated civil rights groups and reported information about them. Mitchell was able to get in touch with sources that had access to secret files belonging to the commission, and Mitchell eventually ran a story in 1989 about how the commission was secretly aiding the defense of Beckwith. Mitchell also went to personally interview Beckwith at his own home, where Beckwith obviously did not have a warm reception for Mitchell.
So he walked me out to the car anyway and gets me out there. And right just about when I'm getting ready to get into my car, he blocks my way. And he says, "If you write positive things about white Caucasian Christians, God will bless you. If you write negative things about white Caucasian Christians, God will punish you. If God does not punish you directly, several individuals will do it for him."
Mitchell's story eventually led to more evidence being found, which convinced officials to reopen the case and finally prosecute Beckwith in 1994, where he would be imprisoned until his death in 2001. Mitchell's next investigation involved the murder of NAACP leader Vernon DeMer, an activist who also fought for African American voting rights. In January 1966, DeMer and his family were attacked by white knights of the KKK in their own home. As the KKK members set the home ablaze, DeMer began to engage in a shootout with them in order for his family to escape safely. DeMer was eventually able to escape, but not without severe burns and injuries. He later died that night in the hospital. Several Klan members were indicted for the attack, but only around 4 of them were convicted. Those convicted would eventually be pardoned a few years later. KKK Imperial Wizard Sam Bowers, the alleged mastermind of the assassination, was tried 4 times, with each case ending in a mistrial. Around 1991, Jerry Mitchell began investigating the case and tracked down a man named Billy Roy Pitts, who was a bodyguard of Sam Bowers, as well as a key witness to the case. After Mitchell found Pitts through the internet, Pitts went on the run after having a warrant for his arrest issued by Mississippi authorities after Mitchell discovered his whereabouts. Pitts, although angry at Mitchell for discovering his location, eventually sent Mitchell a cassette tape that contained his full confession of his involvement in the DeMer attack, as well as Sam Bowers' involvement as the mastermind behind the attack. Pitts turned himself in as Mitchell ran a news story about the confession. The case was reopened, and 7 years later, in 1998, Sam Bowers was convicted to life in prison, where he would eventually die in 2006. In 1963, the 16th Street Baptist Church, a primarily African-American church in Birmingham, Alabama, was attacked by a bomb that exploded under the church steps. The explosion injured around 20 people and 4 young girls were killed. Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robinson, and Cynthia Wesley. 4 Klansmen were arrested as suspects. Due to a lack of witness testimony and physical evidence, the FBI closed the case in 1968, and the suspects were let go. The case was later reopened in the late 1990s, which is when Jerry Mitchell got involved. In 1999, Mitchell was able to get in touch with one of the bombers, Bobby Frank Cherry, and set up an interview with him at Cherry's own home.
Talked a long time, about 6 hours, and he's like, I didn't have anything to do with that church bombing. I left that sign shop at 9:45 because I had to get home and watch wrestling. You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
And he even pulled out this sworn statement from this woman. I remember that night where we're all sitting around watching wrestling. So, the oldest rule in journalism is, even if your mama tells you she loves you, check it out, right? And so we did, and talked to our librarian, Susan Garcia, and she checked on it and came back to me the next day. Had checked in the old Birmingham News clips, and there wasn't any wrestling. So I wrote a story, and he got arrested and went on trial and convicted of 4, murdering those 4 little girls, and got 4 life sentences.
Mitchell's last major case investigation of the civil rights era involves the murders of civil rights workers and activists James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner. These murders were the inspiration behind the film Mississippi Burning, which happened to be Mitchell's inspiration for entering the world of investigative journalism. The 3 activists were visiting Mississippi to talk with congregation members of an African-American church that had been attacked and burned down. While driving at night, policemen followed the activists and pulled them over on the side of the road. The policemen abducted the 3 men, took them into the middle of the woods to a group of Klansmen, and proceeded to beat and shoot them to death. Their bodies were buried at a nearby dam. Days later, after the men were reported missing, the FBI were sent to investigate the surrounding areas to find them. An FBI informant found the buried bodies about a month and a half after the murders. Around 18 Klansmen were charged for the murders, but only 7 of them were convicted. None of them served more than 6 years. 2 suspects, including local church minister and KKK member Edgar Ray Killen, were heavily implicated in the murders, but were let go due to hung juries. During the 1990s, Jerry Mitchell wrote stories about the case for 6 consecutive years after uncovering secret interviews of Vernon DeMer's killer, Sam Bowers, who implicated Killen as the mastermind behind the Mississippi Burning murders. Mitchell was able to find new evidence and witnesses to the murder case as he worked alongside a high school teacher in Illinois named Barry Bradford. Bradford, along with 3 of his students, produced a documentary about Mitchell's new investigations, as well as containing an interview with Killen himself that brought convincing reasons to reopen the Killen case. Mitchell's writing and investigations alongside Bradford's documentary caught media attention and pressured congressional authorities to reopen the case. In 2005, Killen was convicted of being the mastermind behind the murders and was sentenced 3 20-year terms in prison at the age of 80, where he would later die in 2018. With his investigative journalism, Jerry Mitchell has chased a lifelong pursuit of justice. Mitchell understands that we must not forget and ignore the past sins of our country, but to confront them and right as many wrongs of the past as we possibly can. Mitchell's successful investigations inspired others to investigate cold cases of KKK murders in the South, leading to over 30 arrests and convictions of civil rights era murders. Mitchell's work awarded him several humanitarian and journalistic awards, including his most significant award of receiving the Genius Grant from the MacArthur Foundation in 2009. For most of this current decade, Mitchell has been continuing his pursuit of justice by reporting stories about corruption in Mississippi's prison systems. All in all, Mitchell's work has been a reminder that we can't change the horrors of our country's past, but we can try our best to seek redemption for it.
But it led to an unexpected gift, and that's the gift of living fearlessly. Living fearlessly is not about living without fear. Living fearlessly is about living beyond fear. Living fearlessly is about living for something greater than ourselves. It's, as Martin Luther King said, no one really knows why they're alive until they know what they would die for. And isn't that what redemption's all about? Trying to make things right, even when they've gone so terribly wrong in the past. May God bless you as you seek to live fearlessly. Thank you so much.